Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon, where depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to VA Claims Insiders Facebook Live. I am Coach Gil Shuga, along with veteran coach Josh Fleming. Glad to have you here. Josh, how are you doing today?
Doing good, doing well. Not too bad here in Middle Tennessee. Got a little bit of wind outside, but nice 70s degree day. How you doing over there, Gil?
I am doing great, coming to you from the sunny Southwest, just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. This is the time of
Nice.
year where we brag about our weather. Don't ask me about it come July and August. We don't like to talk about that weather when it's 115, 120 degrees out.
No,
But
sir.
right now, it's a beautiful time of year. Spring training baseball is in effect. We got a lot of that down here, split between Florida and Arizona. So a lot of folks are visiting for that. Hey, come on in. We'd love to have you guys here, everybody that's here. We'd love to throw your information in the chat. Tell us where you're joining us from, what branch you served in, and when you served. We'd like to know who we're dealing with. We're going to give a presentation here on the PACT Act and get started here in a couple of minutes. We're going to go through the presentation, and then once we're finished, we'll try and answer as many of the questions you put in the chat as we can throughout the course of our time together. Try and keep them pertinent to the topic at hand. And remember that there's a lot of people in here, so you want to keep your personal, private information personal and private as best you can. We'd love to help you with that.
Oh, we got Florida, Amy, how's it going? Ernest from New York, Bruce from Texas, all over the place. Pennsylvania, Deb. Hello, everybody. Glad you could join us. Thanks for taking time with us to be here, and hopefully, we can educate you on the PACT Act. You learned something today, and give you some good information to take with you.
Hopefully, there's a lot of good information available to you today here from VA Claims Insider. Hopefully, you'll learn something. We'll be able to answer your questions and keep you on track with your VA disability benefit claims. And let's see here. I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. I'm a Navy veteran myself. Glad to see we got plenty of Navy vets in the room here today. We're typically Army heavy just because it's the largest branch, but I'm always fond of saying when I see my fellow Navy vets, it's more about quality than quantity. So a couple of us equals a whole bunch of those folks. And as you all know, as vets, we certainly have that competitive camaraderie between us. I served for quite a number of years in destroyers, driving ships around the Pacific for Uncle Sam quite a few years ago. Now I joined VA Claims Insider about 4 years ago. Been a veteran coach here. I love it. Came in here to look for an opportunity to help fellow veterans with their VA disability claims. Join it every minute. Josh. I'm talking to Jeff
No
Rogers
problem.
all day, one of my fellow coaches.
Jay's, Josh, John, Jeff, it all works anyway. But
there
yes,
you
Coach
go.
Josh. Hey, well, I am a 39-year civilian, but I am Team Army. My sister was in the Army for 14 years, served 3 tours in Iraq, and VA Claims Insider actually helped her get to that 100% permanent and total. She came back beaten and broken, mentally and physically. So VA Claims holds a dear spot in my heart, and that's one of the reasons why I'm glad to be here as a coach now. Also, I had both grandpas served in the Army. One of them actually stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day and survived. So I'm very proud to have that warrior DNA running through my blood. But really, after I graduated college, my grandfather needed help. He needed that in-home care. So I ended up being his caretaker, fought with the VA for months trying to get that help for him. And finally got the help for him, but he's since passed. But knowing what I know now as a coach, I could have gotten him way more help and the benefits he deserved. And so that's my why. I'm here because I want to help the lost, the forgotten, the confused, the frustrated. People just don't know how to get the benefits they deserve by law. So I'm blessed to be here, serve the best way I can, serve my veterans.
Great. One of the things, if you don't know, of the veteran coaches that work here and serve our fellow veterans, most of us are veterans ourselves, but not all. Josh is a great example of that. But everyone that serves here as a coach has some connection to the military and military service. We have some coaches that are veteran spouses, coaches that are, military offspring. siblings like Josh. So we all take pride in our connection to fellow veterans and our veteran service. Um, all right, let's jump in here, Josh. Take us through the disclaimer. Let's get started, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. All right. Disclaimer. So we are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other entity recognized by the Department of Veteran Affairs, and we are not affiliated with the VA in any way. VA Claims Insider is an education-based coaching consulting company for disabled veterans exploring eligibility for increased VA disability benefits and who wish to learn more about that process. VA Claims Insider also connects veterans with vetted independent medical professionals in our preferred provider network for medical examinations and independent medical opinions or IMOs for a wide range of disability conditions. Now, we do have a great class today regarding the PACT Act. I see some comments already, getting anxious and excited to talk about that. So, looking forward to going over it. But first of all, I do want to talk about our elite program here at VA Claims Insider. As you know, this process can be long, frustrating, confusing, and our founder, Brian Reese, has created a really cool program called the Elite Program. And what you get with that is a one-on-one coach like myself or Coach Gill over here. And along with that is a team. We have a team that works with us, not just our initial team, but as a whole company, we all are the team that helps support each other and our coaches. And so with that one-on-one coach, you will get a strategy session. We'll go through, different possibilities for claims, symptoms, diagnoses, things that you're working on going through, and get a strategy that can set you up for your next steps moving forward with the education, with the medical evidence to support that fully developed claim. And through that whole process, you'll get that education, like I said, that one-on-one, reaching out to your coach with any questions you have. And along that process, we'll cover education for a claim submission, the support for that, and of course, the biggest part is that CMP exam, right? The one that gives a lot of our veterans the anxiety and security of that. And so having a coach, a one-on-one, you get on a call with them for that education before that CMP exam, understanding your rating criteria, understanding your symptoms, and really being able to advocate for those symptoms when you go to that CMP exam and speak to what you're going through. And so that's just a big part of what we do here as far as educating and really empowering the veteran to be able to advocate for that. Now, we do have tons of resources with the Elite program. Oh my goodness, you have access to so many different things. One of the things we love is our live classes. We have coffee with the coaches. Those are about 3 times a day classes. But Coffee and the Coaches is one of the classes that we have with different topics and multiple times a week. And it's a great environment, community with other veterans. We also have mental health exam education classes, medical exam education classes. All those classes will be available to you with live coaches talking about these topics and also giving you time at the end for that question and answer time. You can raise your hand, talk, or like here, ask questions in the comment section. So the Elite program does offer a wide range of different resources and expertise with your one-on-one coach. So if that's something you think you could use and take advantage of, you can always reach out with the discovery call. And you can do that by going to vaclaims.help and talk to one of our team members, and they can answer questions for you about this Elite program. Or you can reach out to our organization at vaclaimsinsider.com, and we would love to partner with you on your claim journey. Okay, so let's get into the PACT Act and the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today. So let's just talk about what the PACT Act is, all right? The PACT Act is a law that expands healthcare and disability benefits for veterans who were exposed to toxic substances like burn pits during their military service, all right? Now, it simplifies the process. It allows veterans to receive disability benefits by automatically assuming certain conditions are related to their service, making it easier for them to get the care and compensation they need. Now, the benefits basically get to circumvent that burden of proof, and then now you have what's called a presumptive. So, what is a presumptive condition? Well, the PACT Act presumptive disability is a condition that the VA automatically assumes is related to a veteran's military service based on specific circumstances, right? Such as locations and time period of service. This eliminates a need for the veteran to provide that direct connection or nexus between their service and the conditions they developed, making it easier to qualify for those VA disability benefits, the compensation benefits. Now, a lot of you may be asking, what is a nexus? So I just want to cover that real quick. So a nexus letter, if you don't know, is an evidence-based document prepared by a private medical professional that helps establish a link to connection between the veteran's current disability and their active duty military service, or a secondary condition, a condition, a secondary condition linked to an already service-connected disability. All right, so that's what a nexus letter is, or nexus when the VA talks about that. So now you're probably thinking, how does a presumptive VA disability work? Well, I'm glad you thought that question because I'm going to answer that after I get a drink of water. I know Gil's over laughing at me because I'm just being my normal self.
Nah, you're doing great, man. This is good. This is good information, you know. And
Oh yeah.
tell us how presumptive VA disability works.
So again, a presumptive disability simplifies the process for veterans to receive those VA benefits, right? And here's how it works. Number one, service in a specific location. The veteran must have served in a particular location known for hazardous exposures such as areas with burn pits, Agent Orange, or other toxic substances. And those include Vietnam during the war. Some examples would be certain parts of the Gulf War theater, or areas where veterans are exposed to radiation. Number two is a qualifying time period. The veteran service must have occurred during a specific time frame when the exposures were known or suspected to occur. And the third one would be what goes into development of a presumptive condition. The veteran must have developed a medical condition that is recognized by the VA as being presumptively linked to the exposures in that location and time frame. These conditions are listed under the PACT Act and include various cancers, respiratory illnesses, and other serious health issues that you can take a look at in there as well. So again, this basically it simplifies this whole process for veterans who are in those locations during that time period, right? And it simplifies it by saying they don't need to gather instead of needing to gather the extensive medical evidence, including nexus letters and those connections, to prove the condition was caused by your service. Veterans only need to provide their military service records, such as their DD 214, along with relevant medical documents showing they served in an eligible location during the qualifying time. So this streamlines the process, generally makes it easier and faster for veterans to get the benefits they deserve. All right, Coach Gill, why don't you take away and talk more about the PACT Act basic eligibility criteria? Uh-oh, we don't hear you, Coach. What happened?
I know. No, I muted myself. That was my own fault. Didn't want to hear you or have you listen to me making noises in the background. All
No
right.
problem.
Let's talk about the PACT Act basic eligibility criteria. To qualify for disability compensation under the PACT Act, due to exposure to burn pits or other environmental toxins, you must have served in specific regions during designated time frame. Remember, exposure itself is not a disability. You have to have a current diagnosis of a disability condition and show that you served in a qualifying place at a qualifying time. And some of those eligible service locations include, based upon timeframes, from August 2nd of 1990, service on the ground or in the airspace above, and that's an important addition, above Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, United Arab Emirates, UAE, the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Aden, the Gulf of Oman, the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, and the Persian Gulf or the Red Sea. Long list, but it covers a lot of folks. And then from September 11th, 2001 onward, that includes service on the ground or in the airspace above Afghanistan, Djibouti, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Uzbekistan, or Yemen. You don't have to have served in all those places, of course, but any one of those qualifies you based upon qualifying time and qualifying location. Now, if a veteran who served in these areas develops any of the listed presumptive conditions, the VA presumes that the condition is connected to their service, simplifying the process for attaining compensation. Note that while the PACT Act covers a wide range of conditions, the VA emphasizes that this list of presumptive conditions, including cancers and other diseases, it's not an exhaustive list, and it continues to be updated as new evidence emerges. So you might have a condition today that doesn't qualify for presumptive service connection, but in the future it just might. And so you want to keep an eye on that list. I know there was some questions already in the chat about certain specific conditions. If they're not on the PACT Act list, and we can provide that list for you elsewhere, today they might be in the future, but that is continually evolving. The PACT Act introduces 23 new presumptive conditions, expanding VA benefits for veterans exposed to toxic substances during military service. Now, these conditions cover a broad range of illnesses related to burn pits, Agent Orange exposure, and other hazardous exposures, including respiratory diseases and various cancers. All right. Now, it's not just burn pits. You may have been in country someplace, but you didn't have a particular burn pit around you. It also covers toxic exposure that might have arose from oil well, fire, smoke, from the local air pollution or dust storms. The VA recognizes that a lot of those conditions can and have caused disability conditions within veterans who serve there. Now, within these new presumptive conditions, there are numerous specific medical conditions that the VA now recognizes, making it easier for veterans to qualify for benefits. For example, within the respiratory cancers category, the VA recognizes conditions such as lung cancer, bronchial carcinoma, and laryngeal cancer, all as being presumptive. Now, though the VA has added 23 new conditions, the overall list of presumptive conditions continues to evolve, as I said, ensuring comprehensive coverage for veterans with a wide range of service-related health issues. Don't forget, this is always evolving medical science and research, trying to determine what causes these conditions. And the VA, as you all know, is not the fastest moving organization in the world, but it does evolve and does add conditions. Now, the VA continues to update the PACT Act presumptive conditions list based on the latest research and findings, ensuring the veterans receive benefits for newly recognized service-related illnesses. Now, the following conditions have recently been added to the presumptive list. Hypertension, more commonly known as high blood pressure, is recognized as a presumptive condition for veterans exposed to Agent Orange or other toxic substances, making it easier for affected veterans to claim those benefits. Monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, that's a mouthful, MGUS. It's a blood disorder which can lead to more severe conditions like multiple myeloma. It's also presumptive for veterans exposed to toxic chemicals. Breast cancer is on the list, increasingly recognized cancer linked to toxic exposure can be now included under the presumptive conditions list. Urethral cancer, recently added also as a presumptive condition, and cancers of the paraurethral glands, again, another very specific cancer that's been added to the list. That's not an exhaustive list. We're not going to be able to cover every single thing that is on the PACT Act presumptive list, but a couple key things to take away. The first question you have to ask yourself if you're pursuing a claim authorized for presumptive conditions under the PACT Act, did I serve in a qualifying place at a qualifying time? Did I have documented, and if you did those two things, it's presumed that you were exposed to these conditions. If you're seeking a service connection condition for other toxic exposure, do you have proof that you did have that toxic exposure? But again, it's not exhaustive. If you work with us, we work hard to identify all those things. We have plenty of information available to you on our websites. It's available to the public, or on our Facebook page talking about the PACT Act and various conditions qualifying under the PACT Act. But that's just a primer, not meant to be exhaustive at all. But let's see if we can answer some of the questions that you might have. I think I got everything covered there, Josh.
Yeah.
Jump into the questions here.
Did a great job, Coach.
Thank you. Do you see anything there that jumped out at you? I know I mentioned, somebody had mentioned a specific condition. I don't remember which one it was, but again, that list is always evolving. Do some research, see if your condition is listed as a presumptive condition. If it's not, then you're going to have to get a nexus letter, that connection between your current diagnosis and your military service. Let me address something Ron Bridges asked. He had a most recent CNP exam, denied IBS as a secondary to anxiety panic disorder, but the examiner once again stated it should be service connected to PACT Act. Should have another CNP exam. Should I expect anything to improve my chances? A lot of questions in there, Ron. Let's do our best to answer those, okay? it's hard for us to determine why that decision was made without reviewing the decision itself. That's one of the benefits of working with one of our coaches, that we work hard to review your decisions, help you understand why the VA made the decision they did, whether they followed the proper procedure and looked at the proper evidence to do so. And your decision will always also include favorable findings, which tells you what the VA agrees with or what they find has been proven. But they'll also tell you why they didn't make that service connection. Don't have a current diagnosis. Don't have evidence it began or rose in service. Don't have a nexus connecting those two. Don't have evidence that you served in a qualifying place at a qualifying time, making that condition presumptive, therefore requiring you to have a formal nexus opinion. The best thing you can do to improve your chances, make sure you have those three pieces of evidence for the VA. Look, the VA has to have a current diagnosis of a disability condition. They have to have evidence that it began or arose in service or is secondary to another service-connected condition. And then they have to have a connection between those things. That's your nexus. If it's a truly presumptive condition and you qualify for a presumptive condition, they presume that nexus for you. But if you're missing any one of those three things, the VA cannot say yes to your claim. Right? They simply can't do it by law. So take a look at your claim, see what you've got submitted, make sure you got everything that supports your claim and meets those three requirements, and you should be good to go. But as far as your specific claim, without looking at your stuff, we really can't say. Wish you the
Yeah,
best on that, though.
Yeah, we love to answer as much as we can, but sometimes those specific details really would give us the full picture of where you're at, what you're missing, and be able to help us educate you on those things that we can add to make that a successful claim and a fully developed claim. So again, if you want to make a call to the company at the VA Claims Help and talk with the ambassador, and they can get you sorted out if any questions you have and direct you to a coach, or if there's anything they can help you with resources. So take advantage of reaching out to the company and on that call.
Mark Benefield asked, didn't hear Iraq after 9/11 as a listed location. Did I miss that, or is it just not listed? No, it's listed after 1990, which goes forward. We listed Bahrain, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi, Somalia, UAE, and some of the waters around those areas. That started in 1990 and continued. So it wasn't only after 9/11, it continued. So it was there. So don't count yourself out. And again, look at your own service and compare it to the information about the PACT Act to see what you qualify for, where you served, and what you did. Fair question. I appreciate you following up on that. By the way, let me just jump in here real quick. We do this all day, every day, and so we're accustomed to using certain terms and jargon. And so if we throw something at you that you don't understand, just ask us in the chat. Like, many of you have been through this process before, and you understand that a C&P exam is a compensation and pension exam. But if you're new to this journey, you might not know that. Okay? And the C&P exam, compensation and pension exam, is the exam the VA will usually request for you to submit to after you have started a claim. You'll submit all your evidence, and they'll look at it and say, okay, we want to have our own examination. So they'll call you in or do a telehealth exam. It's an administrative exam for them to evaluate your claim and gather additional evidence to support that. C&P exam. That's what that stands for. Sorry if we throw that jargon around. Josh, you find yourself speaking the language too quickly and forgetting not everybody does?
Exactly. And I try to make sure, like I said, with the nexus, I try to explain the definition of a nexus, because a lot of people, same thing. What's a nexus? What's a presumptive? So if you have anything you don't know or word we've said that you don't understand, please put in the chat, and we'd love to definitely give you a definition to help you understand that. I see Andrea asks, is type 2 diabetes on the PACT Act list? And that just really depends on where you were at, where you served, what you're exposed to, and which list applies to you. Maybe Gil, do you have that off the top of your head?
On the Agent Orange exposure, yes, it is.
Yes,
If you
there it
served
is.
in
Okay.
Vietnam and you qualify under Agent Orange and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, diabetes mellitus,
Yes.
I think is the formal name. Yeah, that does qualify, but it's not on the presumptive list for service in Southwest Asia. Okay.
Exactly. So that's what I was trying to say. Make sure you
that.
know your location, where you're at, and look at that list. There's a list you can go look at with all the different presumptives, diagnoses that are available to you, that you can have as a presumptive. And also, again, the location and the theater that you served in.
Yep. Camp Lejeune water claim included in the PACT Act. Juan Ortega asked that question. There are new presumptive conditions for exposure to the groundwater in Camp Lejeune. And again, it's qualifying place at a qualifying time. The VA's website itself has a list of those conditions. There are a variety of forms of cancer, some blood diseases, things like that. And again, that's evolving. That's one of those current issues. It's in litigation in the civil courts. We don't have anything to do with that, but that oftentimes leads the way for what the VA determines. Okay, it's been proven that this is a real thing. We're going to conduct that. So if you served in places like Camp Lejeune or others where you're concerned about exposure to contaminated substances that have caused a condition, take a look at the information that's out there. Again, our list is not exhaustive today. We don't have time for that in this presentation, but there is information out there for you to take a look at.
I saw MJ asked, what about leukemia? And leukemia is one that's on there for the Camp Lejeune. That's one of the presumptives. Adult leukemia for the contaminated water exposure.
Yep, there's that's a blood cancer, obviously. So that's, again, one of those we were talking about. Larry J. Wilson asked, my experience is that blood pressure is not compensated as long as I'm on medication to control it. Blood pressure, high blood pressure, commonly also formerly known as hypertension, that's a difficult one to get a rating for because the VA determines that based upon your numbers, your
yeah, I'm trying to think of it too.
Diastolic and systolic numbers. The systolic and diastolic numbers, the upper and the lower number. 140 over 100 pushes you up into the 10% range. Many vets don't quite hit those numbers, and so they might find it service-connected but rated at 0%. Now, keep in mind, that is still a service-connected disability, even at 0%. What that means, is contrary to a denial, is that the VA recognizes you have this disability condition, that it was caused by your military service, but at the time they're evaluating it, it does not rise to the level of compensation. For you in the future, that means if it gets worse, you can request an increase without having to reprove that it should be service connected. That's always a challenge. So, and it's not just because you're on medication to control it. Many vets, many doctors like to put people on blood pressure medication as a preemptive move to keep your blood pressure from getting into dangerous ranges. But if you've had that history, that's what they're going to look at to determine the numbers for you if they find it to be service connected. Okay. See any that pique your interest there, Josh? You want me to grab one?
Go ahead and grab one.
Let's see. Bob Stepp asked, any update on jet fuel firefighting foam that could be added to thyroid disease already rated as presumptive? Again, these are evolving things. There is the toxic exposure risk assessment that they're required to do under the PACT Act also to determine if, in fact, you performed roles where they presume you had toxic exposure while you're on active duty. But here's a common misunderstanding. Just because the VA may concede that you have toxic exposure risk activity while on active duty, that doesn't mean that you're going to be service connected or something. You still have to have a diagnosed disability condition. They may find that, yeah, you had an exposure. In some cases, you still need that nexus opinion to connect that. It's about the medical science. That's very confusing for a lot of folks. If the VA hasn't said, we already accept that this condition is caused by this exposure, then you're going to have to get a medical opinion that says that. Okay, that's your nexus opinion. Firefighting foam is one of those hotly contested issues right now. It's in the courts. The VA is looking for, all right, did you have exposure? And not just, I went to firefighting school once when I was a seaman in the Navy. They're looking, did you have extreme exposure? Were you a regular firefighter? Were you doused in foam? Did you inadvertently ingest that foam? And has there enough evidence to show that it has been more likely than not the cause of the particular condition you have? So that is a claim that could be successful, but it is a difficult one. Same with jet fuel, similar similar kind of analysis. Just because you worked around jet fuel doesn't mean you have a disability. You have to show the diagnosis and give them enough evidence to show that it's service connected.
All right, I got a question from Chris Corpita. Sorry if I did not say that last name correctly, but from Chris. He's asking, do you require a nexus letter for PACT Act presumptive or no, because they are presumptive? Yes, Chris, you do. Sorry, Chris, you do not need a nexus for presumptive. That's part of the PACT Act. The presumptive basically allows you to circumvent that burden of proof with the VA, where they have already put into effect that if you are in a certain place at a certain time under the PACT Act, then it's presumed that your whatever your diagnosis fits with those presumptives, then it's presumed that it was caused or related to that time in service. Okay, so you do not need a nexus for presumptive. James Sanchez, he said, should I bring my DBQ paperwork and my PACT Act request to my CMP exam? All that paperwork, you usually want to have that submitted when you submit your claim. And so once you do that, I would submit everything with your claim. Gil, you got any other, ideas about that? Or
Sure. You can bring your paperwork to your CNP exam, but the CNP examiner is not required to accept it. They can if they want to, but they're not required to. Don't forget that examination has been requested by the VA. The rater has said, hey, I want this exam over these topics, and they've already provided that examiner the information they want them to have to prepare them to do your examination. So if you come in with additional evidence, they may go, hey, I've got everything the VA wanted me to look at already. If it's a duplicate of what they've already had, you're just giving them more work to do. That's why they don't have to accept it. And they oftentimes won't. They might. You can ask them to. You can offer it to them. But don't be offended if they say, I'm not taking that. That's why, as Josh wisely pointed out, you want to make sure that's already part of your claim. Between the time you submit your claim and the time you have a CNP exam, if you obtain new and relevant medical evidence to support your claim, add that to your claim. There's ways to do that online. It's very simple. You can do that. That's very important. We stress that with our vets all the time. We're working with them. Look, we want to put together a fully developed claim so you got everything in initially so they can be off and running and get your claim decided. But new evidence does come up. You have a new doctor's appointment. The doctor has an extended diagnosis, another opinion. You want to add that to your claim. It can be done. But don't expect that CNP examiner to say, sure, I'd love to have that new information. They're not required to do that.
And that's not saying you can't bring notes or speak to what you're going through. So yes, I mean, notes are highly recommended. That's perfectly okay and acceptable. But again, like as Gil was saying, bringing that new evidence, it's like a 50-50 depending on whether they want to look at that evidence and evaluate you with the evidence that you brought in. So again, make sure you have everything already ready to go. Your fully developed claim submitted, and you've done all that due diligence. So yeah, that's basically what you want to have ready for that claim. What do you think, Gil? Is there another one that tickles your fancy here?
Well, let's take a look here. You folks are doing a great job with these questions. There's a lot of good ones here. So I'm trying not to duplicate them. See if we talk about some stuff.
David Waters said he needs help. David, we'd love to hear from you and support you, buddy. Educate you and coach you. Go ahead and give a call to that hotline number, vaclaims.help, and definitely have someone reach out to you and help you with any of that.
Yeah, have a discovery call with one of our veteran ambassadors. They'll be able to answer your questions about the process, about what we're doing, whether or not we think you're qualified, and if we think we might be able to help you. We'd love to bring you on board. Their vaclaims.help is a great way to go to do that. Jump on there. Albert Serbo, I hope I'm saying that right, Albert. There was a JP5 contamination in the water on board the Lincoln when I was deployed. I can't remember if I went to the dock, but I developed headache shortly after. Is this worth claiming? Well, do you have a diagnosis of headaches, cluster headaches, tension headaches, migraine headaches, something like that? And can you tie it to your service connection? Remember, exposure is not a disability. Just because there was contamination doesn't mean that caused a disability for you. It may be coincidental. If you can get a nexus to do that, headaches aren't a presumptive condition. Okay, they're just not. JP5 contamination may cause several things, but again, that's another one where they may or may not concede toxic exposure. But if you did and you went to the doctor and it's in your records, they might be able to see that. So again, that's a tough one. This is a puzzle in many cases. All right, and you got to have all the right pieces to show the VA the picture you want them to see to say yes to your claim. We work hard with our veterans to try and coach them, guide them, educate them into submitting the best claims they can, claims that it's easy for the VA to say yes to and difficult for them to say no to. You want to be the best claimant you can be. A big part of that is your own education. You need to be smart about your claim. You need to understand what the symptoms are, and you need to understand exactly how the VA rates those conditions and what they're looking for to be able to say yes to you.
Exactly, Coach Gil. Like I was saying, knowing the criteria, right? Knowing how your symptoms relate to the VA criteria, how to speak to those symptoms, how to advocate for them, so you get the rating you deserve. Because I always tell my vets at the end of the day, what you don't say, they don't know, right? And be able to speak to them properly and know what you're dealing with. That gives you the power in your hands to relate to the VA what you're going through. Allows you to have the confidence and show them and paint, like Gail was saying, paint that picture to where they can see the full picture and know, hey, this person has this, this, and this, which equals to a successful claim. Putting those puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, just to go back on the Camp Lejeune question, they're not technically part of the PACT Act, but there is new rulings under the VA that certain conditions um, for exposure to Camp Lejeune water will be presumptive, but they're not part of the PACT Act specifically.
Yeah, thanks for correcting me, Coach, on that one. I was
Sure.
definitely just talking about the other things that are covered under those things with Camp Lejeune. But yes, they're not technically part of the PACT Act.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this stuff can be pretty complicated, so you don't want to jump to conclusions or misunderstand what your conditions are. And the VA is going to put it on you to understand what you're claiming. They do have a duty to assist. They're required to try and help you as much as they can, but they're human beings. And, can't expect them to be perfect. Let's see what else we got here.
Sorry, we're reading through these comments. Lots of great comments in here.
All right, Jane Hegwood Brown. Should I submit my evidence/doc reports when requesting a higher level review? In other words, I should assume they already have that info. Well, first of all, let's explain what a higher level review is, commonly referred to as an HLR. It's a form of appeal of a previous decision, either because you disagree with their lack of finding a service connection, or you disagree with the rating they give you. One other, I forget what the third one is, but it's or the effective date. A higher level review, by definition, is a de novo review, a new review where you do not add new evidence. You cannot submit new evidence for that process. You're asking that a senior rater, someone with more experience and specialized training, review your claim the way it was submitted to see if the decision was made properly, if they would have made the same decision. And for that reason, there's no new evidence allowed. The only input you do have is you can request an informal conference where you can ask that that senior rater call you and give you an opportunity to explain why you think they made a mistake. So if you think your claim is better suited by having new evidence submitted, that would be a supplemental claim, which is another form of appeal where you are required to have new and relevant evidence to change that decision. So keep in mind which process you're going through. We analyze that on a regular basis. When we have a vet that comes back and they either got denied a claim or they didn't get the rating that they felt the evidence supported, we take a look at which is the best path for you to respond to that. Is a request for a higher level review the smart thing to do because they just made a mistake? And that's why that system's in place, because they make mistakes. Or were you missing some evidence that would have helped you that you now have, and it's new and relevant evidence to support that claim? Again, it's important to understand the process. This is a big component of the education that we work on. Do you understand the process and what your options are and how to respond best to the VA to get the legitimate ratings that you deserve?
I see a question from Lolo Vasquez. Is there a secondary for tinnitus and rhinitis? I may have some, but don't know about it. And that would be something, Lolo, that as a coach, I would want to really see what you have as far as medical documentation, what you have connected, and see what's available to you. I mean, common secondary to tinnitus, a lot of my veterans deal with headaches with the humming and ringing in their ears, possibly vertigo, Meniere's, certain things like that that affect that inner ear canal. Those are possible connections there. For upper respiratory, other connections could be possibly sleep apnea. But there's lots of criteria for those as well. So we don't like to go too deep into strategies when it comes to individual veterans because your story is going to be different from another veteran. Your symptoms, what you're going through, it's going to be unique to you. So if you'd like more education on that, definitely reach out, get signed up with a coach, and they'll get into the weeds of what you're going through, the details of all those symptoms and what you can connect.
Yep, great explanation. Um, we have to give you probably the most hated answer in the world for some of this stuff. It depends. It depends. It depends on you. Depends on your diagnosis. Depends on your service. Depends upon all those things. And not just whether you're going to be service connected, but what you're going to be rated for. As we talked about, certain conditions are going to be granted but rated at 0. That can be frustrating. But what's important about that is that even a 0% service connected disability can support a secondary condition. Or the secondary condition is, for those who don't know, it's a disability that's caused by an already service connected disability. In other words, it's not something that was caused directly by your military service, but it was caused later because this other condition you have is causing you additional problems in another area that support a disability rating by itself. Very important consideration.
Great point. I see a couple of people asking for help or need a phone number. We will definitely reach out to each one of you after this call if we can't answer them beforehand to give you the information you need for a phone number to reach out and access to our ambassadors. So we will
I'm going
make
to go
sure we
back
answer
to,
those.
thanks. That's a great point. I'm going to go back to Albert Skirbo because he asked another question. I don't mean to give too much attention to too many particular people, but this is a great question. Albert asked, I'm wondering what I can get from my doctor as somewhat of a statement to put on my claim. Well, first of all, you want a current diagnosis of your disability condition. That you got to have that. But I think what you're asking for is, can my doctor give me a nexus opinion? Can he provide a medical opinion connecting that current disability to my military service? Got to have that too. A lot of doctors won't do that. A lot of doctors either won't do it because they don't know how to do it. They've never written any documents for the VA. Some private doctors are forbidden from offering medical opinions like that for outside sources by their medical malpractice insurance carriers. I've seen doctors who try to help and just don't do a very good job. When you work with us, you have access to our preferred provider network, in particular a company called Telemedica, which is a private separate company that works with veterans to help support their legitimate VA disability claims. They can provide a variety of things, including diagnosis of disability conditions under certain circumstances. They can provide disability benefits questionnaires, DBQs, nexus opinions connecting your diagnosed condition either directly to your service or secondary to another condition. And they also provide mental health psychological evaluation services to support a legitimate mental health claim, which we find that many of our vets have a mental health component to their disability profile. And so by being a member of our program and having access to their services at a discounted rate, that opens up a whole source of or wealth of resources for you from that private company that you're eligible to work with through your affiliation with us. But you don't have to work with them if you're a member of our program. You can work with whoever you want, your own doctor, if they're qualified and they're willing to help you and they can do it and do a good job for you. More power to you. But you got to have that diagnosis, which should be in your medical records, whether that's private doctor, VA doctor, anywhere you want to go. Telemedica, if you're working with us. And you got to have that nexus opinion from whoever is going to provide that to you. Hopefully that helps answer that question for you.
And just to add to that real quick, Coach, is Telemedica, when they're offering that medical documentation, the nexus letter, they include in that nexus letter legal precedent, medical precedent. So a lot of very valuable supported evidence for the connection between your disability and your service or other service connected disabilities. So that's why those nexus letters just have a lot more weight behind them. Now I'm sure you have, coach, as well as being able to review other nexus letters, and some are good, some are okay. A lot of times, like Coach Gill was saying, a lot of doctors who don't work with only veterans like Telemedica does, they don't know how to speak the same language as the VA, the wording that they're looking for to get that connection. So that's why we really recommend a company like Telemedica, who has that history and that precedent of being able to supply those really strong nexus letters to support your disability. But again, private doctors can 100% do a nexus letter, and there are resources that can help them do that and support them with any questions they might have. But at the end of the day, we do recommend the strong nexus from Telemedica.
Great info. Pete Karuskin. Again, you guys are challenging us with some of these names today. I'm doing my best. I hope I got it right. Pete, you asked a question. I was exposed to burn pits in Iraq and I developed GERD with Barrett's esophagus. Is that a presumptive underneath the PACT Act? No, GERD is not a presumptive under the PACT Act. You're going to have to show that your GERD was caused by your military service. It was diagnosed on active duty. It can be a direct connection. If not, it's going to have to find a way to connect it secondary to something else. Something that's important to understand about GERD, the VA changed the way they rate GERD last year, and they made it harder to get a rating. Nowadays, if you don't have a diagnosis of an esophageal stricture, which is a narrowing of the esophagus, and they can only be found with an endoscopy, where they put a scope down your throat. And if you have that, you probably know it. But if you don't have a diagnosis for an esophageal stricture, usually the most you're going to get for a GERD diagnosis that's service-connected is a 0% rating. But Barrett's esophagus can be secondary to GERD. Okay, so again, this is another area where I was mentioning a little bit ago that a 0% rating can be a perfectly fine and legitimate connection to a higher rating. In Barrett's esophagus, if you have that, it can be secondary to GERD, and it can be rated substantially higher than that GERD rating. So take a look at those things. Not presumptive, sorry to tell you that, but it doesn't mean it's not service connected or caused by maybe the medications you're required to take for another service connected disability, making it secondary to that condition. A lot of analysis goes into this stuff. Great question, though, Pete. Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, great point. That's been a conversation I've had with many veterans with the new changes with the esophageal strictures. Yeah, it makes it a lot more difficult for them to get the help they need for the symptoms they have to meet that criteria for the high rating. We got James Sanchez down here. He was asking how to start the process for PACT Act, what form is required. Remember, James, you basically just need to have your DD-214, so the records that show where you were located, where you served, what time the time frame you served in. And with those documentation and the medical evidence to support your diagnosis, that's what you're going to need to support that claim. As far as a form to fill out for PACT Act, there's no really form that you need to start before you do your claim and get the medical evidence to support it.
Yeah, remember, the PACT Act doesn't create claims within the VA disability process. It establishes that certain conditions are eligible for presumptive service connection. So you're making a claim just like you would make any other claim, but if it's a PACT Act based connection, you want to make sure that you tell the VA that I served in this place, a qualifying place, during this time, a qualifying time, and I have a current diagnosis of this condition, a qualifying disability. Those are the things you have to show the VA to establish presumptive service connection under the PACT Act. You don't file a PACT Act claim, right? There's no such thing as a PACT Act claim. The PACT Act does something different. That's a common misunderstanding. So you want to file your claim as you would any other claim. The basis for your service connection, though, is authorized by the PACT Act, if in fact you have that. As we mentioned, a lot of respiratory issues, rhinitis, sinusitis, bronchitis, asthma, things like that, certain cancers. You have those diagnoses, you served in a qualifying place at a qualifying time, that's the basis for your claim.
Yeah, the PACT Act just expands those parameters, covering different exposures, and so you have a streamlined process to get those connections.
And by the way, James Sanchez mentioned, so how to start the PACT Act process if no C&P is required. We're not saying there's no C&P required. All right. It's still a claim. They may want to have a C&P exam, and more likely than not, they will, in order to confirm the diagnosis of the condition and to determine the severity of that condition. Don't forget, making a claim isn't an automatic rating of a certain level. That rating is based upon the severity of your condition, frequency, severity, and duration of your symptoms, what impact they're having on your life. So more likely than not, for most conditions, you're still going to have a C&P exam. Some of you have been through record review exams. Those are called ACE exams. ACE stands for Acceptable Clinical Evidence. That is still a form of C&P exam, but it's one where the VA does not require you to appear. They feel that the records you've submitted are sufficient to make a determination. They will still have a C&P examiner take a look at those records and submit a report to the rater to determine, or to recommend rather, what they see your claim should be, whether service connected, and to what it should be rated as.
I got a question here from Neil. Neil L. What U.S. code documents covers all the vet conditions, primary and secondary diagnoses, and secondaries? So I'm guessing you're just talking about all the conditions, all the ratings. Where can you go to get all that information? Well, they have something called the 38 CFR. And in there, you can look up all the different rating criterias, all the different symptoms, diagnoses, what you could be rated at for where your symptoms meet in that criteria. So that's the main big book full of all the information that you can search through. And I recommend using that control find because it's a lot of information.
If you enjoy reading federal regulations, more power to you, brother. That's I've done that a few times.
Sometimes what we got to do.
That's some work. That's some work, man. That is some work.
Knowledge is power. It's still work, though.
Well, I'm gonna share. Yeah, Raymond Werning. Sorry about that. This is more a testimonial than anything else, but I'm going to share it anyway. Telemedica did my PTSD claim. When it came down to my C&P exam, the examiner told me he was just there to rubber stamp what they said. That's great. That's awesome.
Not mad about
it. No, not at all. I mean, say more. That's you can't expect that from every C&P examiner. Telemedica does great work. They're very good at what they do. They provide excellent evidence. That's why we like recommending them to our vets, because they do good work, even though they're a separate company from us. You can't anticipate that kind of result every time. I don't want anyone to be misunderstanding. It's a guaranteed win. No, it's not. There's no such thing as a guaranteed win. Anyone that tells you they can guarantee you a particular result, the VA is lying to you. You should run away as fast as you can. But this is just an example where if you submit strong medical evidence that supports a legitimate claim, the VA is going to look at that and go, okay, we see what you're trying to do here. We see what you're saying. We see the evidence that you have. And that's why it's important to arm yourself with the best medical evidence that you can get. You want that C&P examiner to look at your records, or the rater to look at your records and go, okay, that makes sense. That's a complete claim. That's a fully developed claim. I had to highlight this one, though, because it's like I said, it's kind of an unexpected testimonial. Raymond, thanks for sharing that with us. We appreciate that. Hope you had some success there.
Awesome. I got a question from Buick from our YouTube. Where do I get records to start a claim? So you can get records from multiple places. You have your service treatment records, and there's resources to request those, get those moving, because those can sometimes take a while. You have your Blue Button report. That's if you go to the VA, if you've been seen since your service at your My Healthy Vet, you can access all your records there. And of course, private medical records. When you go see a doctor with a private doctor, those medical records hold just as much weight. Any medical doctor's licensed in your state will hold weight to support a diagnosis for you. So that's where you can get your medical records. If there's any other records that I'm missing.
No, that's, your medical records, your service treatment records. The VA will automatically get your service treatment records when you submit your first claim, and they'll remain part of your claim file, C file as it's called, throughout your claim process. That becomes a cumulative file that they have all the time. Way 33, let's see, about to retire after 20 years in the Army. I just completed my last VA appointment. I heard a lot about secondary conditions. My VSO didn't file for any, but will the VA auto claim symptoms? First of all, secondary conditions rely on an underlying service-connected condition already. So if you don't already have a service-connected condition, you don't have anything to support a secondary condition yet. You can't get a secondary condition first. So once you have your initial rating from the VA, that's when it's time to explore secondary conditions. Remember, secondary condition is caused by an already service-connected disability. If you don't have a service-connected disability, you can't get a secondary condition granted. Okay, that's the definition of secondary conditions. You're smart to pursue all this as you're getting out. Too many vets ignored this stuff. Back in my day, we didn't know anything about the VA. You know, when I left active duty, it was like, hey, here's your record. That's your gate. Thanks for your time. Oh, by the way, if you ever want to buy a house, you might want to call the VA. They think they can help you with that. That was all we knew. That was it, man. Nowadays, the military is doing a lot better educating their members soon leaving, our future veterans. Take advantage of that. If you know any vets, if you know any service members, rather, still in active duty contemplating separation or retirement, urge them to make sure they, as Brian Reese is fond of saying, get their butt to the doctor. Okay. And that's so important. Hopefully, We33 is documented as many things as he could during those 20 years and get the ratings that he or she deserves on the way out. And if there's more to do it. Okay. You want to be proactive about your health care. It's your claim. As we like to say, nobody should care more about it than you. Josh, what are we going to add there?
I'll say, man, Coach Gill, you were right on the money. I can't tell you how many of my veterans say, man, I wish I would have gone to medical. I wish I would have documented this thing. You know, is suck it up and keep moving. Oh, your back hurts. Stretch it out, take some pills and keep moving. Man, so many stories like that. So yes, good job for getting in there, getting it documented, getting the, you know, all the medical evidence you're going to need to take care of the symptoms you are possibly going to have in the future and those issues. So good for you for taking that initiative.
Yeah, you know, when we served, we were all 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I don't care where you served. I don't care what you did. I don't care when you served. The mentality for many of us was, I'm not going to sick call. I'm not going to sick bay. I'm going to suck it up. I was Navy. My philosophy was, the only way you're getting me to sick bay is on a stretcher. So go away. I got things to do, you know, and you just live with it and tough it out. Doesn't serve you well as you get older, but doesn't make it impossible either. We find ways to overcome those as best we can. May create some additional hurdles, but you still got to get everything documented. We only got time for like one or two real quick. Jorge Suarez asked, does sleep apnea qualify for PACT Act? No, it does not. Sleep apnea is a tough one to get. A lot of vets are under the misconception that if the VA diagnosed my sleep apnea, they have to service connect me for it. Not true at all. Not true at all. Not true at all. You know, that's bad information that's out there in the world. If you weren't diagnosed on active duty, it can't be a direct connection. It's going to have to be secondary to something else. The most common supported secondary condition or condition to which sleep apnea can be connected as a secondary are respiratory conditions, things like rhinitis, sinusitis, bronchitis. Asthma and sleep apnea can't be rated at the same time. So if you're already rated for asthma, but you're at 10, 30%, but you have sleep apnea, you might be able to get your sleep apnea with asthma and the sleep apnea if you use a breathing device like a CPAP, that mask we all make fun of. That's 50% rating. So even though you might lose your 30% asthma rating, you gain a 50% sleep apnea rating in its place. So not service connected, probably secondary. Certain conditions work, others do not.
And let me add in, just because you have a CPAP doesn't mean you can get that rating. You have to be using the CPAP. How many times, oh, this thing's annoying. It doesn't fit my face. I wake up and throw it off. Oh, I can't stand the thing. But according to the VA criteria for a sleep apnea rating at that 50%, you actually have to be using it. So make sure you're consistently using that, because that data collection gets fed back to the VA so they can see that.
One real quick thing, and this is important, Buick asked one last time. I got out in 2008. Is it too late? It is never too late to pursue your VA disability claims. There's no statute of limitations on the VA disability claims. We have Vietnam vets come to us to work with us for the very first time. They've never submitted a claim before. It is not too late. I don't care how long you've been out. I don't care what you've been doing since then. If you've got legitimate disability claims, you should pursue those claims. You served, you deserve. That's our motto on purpose. Hey,
yes, sir.
Hopefully you guys learned something today. It's been a pleasure working with you, Josh. You think we helped them out a little bit, maybe?
I think we answered some pretty good questions, gave some really good information. And again, all these resources, you can check us out on vaclaimsinsider.com. There's a lots of resources that are readily and freely available to our veterans. Again, we want you to have the education to get those benefits that you deserve by law. So we're all about educating the masses, and definitely share any experiences you have with other veterans. Share the education you've gotten from us if you've been part of our program. We love helping the veterans in any way we can.
And real quick, any questions we didn't get to in the chat, our team will do their best to answer all of those on Facebook as they can. When you do work with us, if you want to come join us, we'd love to have you. Again, you'll get your one-on-one coaching with your assigned coach and work with your coaching team. We'll educate you on the claim submission process to make sure you submit the proper claims the right way. We offer our education classes 3 times a day, our coffee with the coaches, different things. Our founder, Brian Reese, has a new book out, VA Claims Secrets. That's a great resource for anyone that's pursuing VA disability claims. And again, if you have more questions about what we do, reach out to one of our veteran ambassadors for a discovery call. Go to vaclaims.help. We'd love to work with you. VA Claims Insider is here to partner with veterans to help them get the ratings and the benefits that they deserve. You're always welcome to join us here, whether you're a member or not. It's great to see everybody. Have yourselves a great day.
Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate everybody. Thank you for your service. See you guys.